So I feel like the first thing is that this word detox, there's the biological reality, and that's what I want to get into with you. And then there is this culturally, we've taken the word detox. And so I almost feel like, detox means many things for many different people. And it's been, the most marketed word. And so there's a lot that I actually struggle with around the word detox. And so when we're talking about like having a cleanse with a whole bunch of fruit juice and somebody says that's a detox, or there's like, a salad delivery program where you're having a bunch of agave and everything's in plastic and like that's a detox. Or somebody's not going to drink for 4 weeks and that's a detox. So I feel like before we can even start the conversation, it's really what actually is detox. And I think to ground it in that place becomes way more interesting. I get really interested in thinking about like the detoxification pathways, learning about what we're actually detoxing. And I think the biggest place to start is to maybe I almost feel like detox, and I feel like it's mostly women, it's like whatever we've been culturally shamed for, there's like shame bundled up in detox too, around like I've been bad and now I need to detox, and it's not technically correct what's happening. So I feel like
you touch on so many important things. I feel like the word detox has been overused, and now it almost has a negative connotation in a way. Definitely in the conventional world where I'm trained, it's, every time a patient comes to the doctor, a conventionally trained MD, and says, should I detox? Do I need to detox? Their eyes start rolling over and like, oh no, what have you bought this time from the internet, right? And it's a shame because there is a very valid kind of aspect to detox, because detoxification is occurring in our bodies all the time, 24/7, through our natural detox organs that are supported by nutrients, our food, and our lifestyle. And there are ways we can use to harness and kind of really boost, I don't know if boost is the right word, but support these organs to work better. Because the reality is that we are bombarded by environmental toxins. There's now 80,000 chemicals in use that are not, most of them are not studied for human safety. And there's just, there's spillages, like we just had the Ohio derailment that released tons and tons of chemicals, potential carcinogens into our air. And, things that get released into the air don't just stay in that area, right? They travel with the wind, and we're all exposed everywhere in the world. We're connected in the world. And unfortunately, because of industrial processes, we are just exposed to so many different toxins every day now, to the point where our bodies just like, they're just overburdened, like the detox organs are overwhelmed. So we do need to support them, because the standard American diet is also very nutrient poor, right? So yeah, I love that you're delving into this, because, and I really actually love that point you brought up about the shame, because every time I hear people use the word detox, is always kind of around the holiday times, right? Like, oh, I've been so bad, I ate too much, or had a vacation, I drank too much, I need a detox, I need to go home and detox. And it's like, well, it doesn't really work like that, right?
Yeah.
Because your
And
detox organs are actually working all the time, and you can support it all the time, even when you're in holiday mode or on vacation. You can still be doing things that support your detox organs, even when you're eating things that you perhaps don't think you should be eating. So it doesn't have to be this on-off switch. Like, you don't have to be in toxic mode or detox mode. You can just live a detox lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I think comes up is for me especially, it's like, why are you always sweating? Why are you taking these antioxidants? What do you do? And there's an eye roll, and it's like, ooh, these crazy. And again, I would say like it's directed towards women, right? Because there's a whole biohacking world for men, and those men are looked at as like strong and extreme and type A and successful, whatever that is, whether it's a male athlete that's biohacking to stay in the game, or it's a male business person who's like keeping sharp, aging well. When a woman does it, it's like, you're so pathetic.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
You're pathetic. You're like, you've fallen for all of this wellness marketing. You have an eating disorder, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
All of this. You're orthorexic. I don't hear that term used for men. So, there's also
a great point you bring up. That is a great point. And I feel like, that we do as women, we do carry that burden. It's like, why can't I look after myself? And I want to feel well. I want to be at my best, to live my best life. That's what I'm trying to do. And it's not orthorexia when like I came from a place where I was fatigued all the time. I was so tired, brain fogged. I couldn't be the best doctor I wanted to be for my patients. And, now that I feel great, I don't want to go back there. And, I'm doing things to look after myself so that I don't go back there. It's not, I do see there's a fine line. Some people do go extreme, and then, all the joy starts to come out of their lives, like around food, like they are so limited in their approach to food. It's like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. And this has seed oils, this has MSG. And it's like, okay, I can only eat this one thing every day. And that's not healthy too. So I feel like it's really nuanced, and it's a spectrum, right? And I hate like the black or white type of thinking. I feel like everything is on a spectrum, is nuanced. And, you are in your own season, like do what's right for you, and your body will tell you too.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we could start here, because this conversation is not yet another conversation to like put fear out there and like, here are 20 places that toxins live that you didn't know about. We are actually going to answer that question. But the point is to not scare you more, make you feel more guilty and afraid. It's not that. It's to actually, you're going to help educate us. And I feel like anybody who's listening to this is in tune with their body. And so that's like the first step, is really knowing when you're tired, knowing when you feel foggy, knowing that you're experiencing PMS, knowing that things that are popping up on your skin, that's, maybe common, not normal. And so identifying that, getting some education around what are some of the things that contribute to that. And then when you have all the information, it's not, like you said, to only eat 3 foods, never go to a restaurant again and hide in the house. It's to play with it all. See how far, I mean, like the game I'm always playing is, how far can I push it before I start to feel it? And then I come back.
Yes, I love it.
And different seasons in life. And this is why I'm really excited to talk, because, I recently was in Italy with my family. And so, 3 wild meals a day. And a lot of the messages that I got for people were, are you feeling okay? I did that, I would feel terrible. And I've come from a place of, I absolutely could not have, forget about wheat and gluten, like grains were too much for me. Forget about, a sip of alcohol, absolutely could not process it. But going through, I think, opening up the detoxification pathways in really getting all of this education and playing it smart when I'm at home, it really has changed my body. So that I go party in Italy. And when I say party, I mean like, you know, spaghetti, that kind of party.
Yes.
I feel great. And
Yeah,
get
yeah.
back.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. And I feel like there is a big element of, where you've healed yourself. Like, if the gut is really disrupted, the lining is disrupted, and there's unhealthy microbiome, you're going to react to more foods. Whereas if you've done some healing, in your 80% of your 80-20, and you're healing your gut, then there is a lot more resilience there, right? And it, for many people to get to that stage of disrupted gut and food intolerances, it's been happening in your body for like 5-10 years before you even realized, right? It's the body just holds on and like tries to help us until one day it's just like, okay, I give up now. I just can't do it anymore. And then, that's when we start getting symptoms. But have you come across the milkshake study where they gave these volunteers? It's a small study, but I just find it fascinating because it really shows the role our mindset plays in our health. But they gave volunteers, and then they controlled for it somehow. I forget now the exact details. It's on my Instagram feed. I shared it like a year ago. But they gave volunteers the same milkshake, and they stressed half the group. Like they showed them images and, basically put them in fear, fight or flight mode while they're drinking the milkshake. And the other group were in calm mode and they felt good about themselves. And I think one group was told this milkshake is really good for you. It has like great antioxidants, blah, blah, blah. And the other group were told it's really bad for you. It's going to make you gain weight. It's going to kill you or something like that. And they measured actual physiological parameters. So this is not subjective anymore. They actually measured like blood markers. And the group that were put in a fight or flight mode and told this is really bad for you, they had way higher inflammatory markers than the group that were told this is really good for you, and they were in the calm state when they consumed it. So it's just so fascinating to me.
It is. And I feel like it's the combination of that, and I feel like anybody that has gone through having an autoimmune condition or, any kind of thing that flares up, it's that combo of like, or maybe even 60-40 of your mindset, stress, trauma around something, and then the biological kind of like 3D material.
Yes.
Because I've also tried the other thing where I'm like, yeah, it's 100% mindset. And so I've gone out on a limb of,
right.
Hey, I'm just going to keep like, again, I love to see like, where am I at? How far can I push it? So I guess it's not 100%, but
Yep, you're right.
factor.
Yeah, I'm not saying go out and eat McDonald's every day and drink your milkshake every day, but it's just that, most people just focus on the physical, right? And the food is all about the food, and they forget stress and all the other lifestyle things that can affect our health as well. So
yeah. And then my last question around just sort of like you're placing us in this detox conversation before we get into the nitty-gritty is this notion of, I feel like the other pushback around it is, why are you doing all this? Why are you so fussy? Why are you taking all these antioxidants? We didn't have to do this before. And I think you touched on it, which is correct. But our great grandparents didn't have 80,000 chemicals. They weren't bathed in blue light. What are some of the other things out there that are happening for us? We're in a new environment. We've never been here before.
We are like, I mean, just look at the food system alone. Like monocropping has depleted soil diversity, soil nutrients. So, I mean, depending on what study you look at, there are studies showing that food now has less nutrient quality compared to food, 30, 40 years ago. It's all like the quality of your food really comes down to the soil quality, right? Like how much mineral that soil has, how much microbiome diversity that soil has, and pesticides, glyphosate, all of these things have killed off the beneficial bacteria in our soil, and that in turn can affect the nutrient quality of our food. So that's number one. So our detox organs need a lot of different nutrients, zinc, magnesium. Like I know you make some great products that actually provide these minerals that are very, very important in detoxification. And, a lot of the toxicants that we're exposed to, for example, glyphosate, actually displaces these minerals in our bodies. So we actually have to provide our bodies with more to kind of compete with these toxicants just so our normal bodily processes can occur. So that's number one. And our food, just the standard American diet, deficient in nutrients, deficient in fiber, two very important things for detoxification. Stress is huge, right? We touched on that earlier. I just feel like most people are living in a constant fight or flight mode. Our phone has a lot to answer for that, because most people, the first thing they do when they wake up is they check their phones, and immediately they're bombarded with a to-do list, what's happening around the world, like, this has happened, that's happened, and that's just not natural. Like, that's not how humans are supposed to wake up, right? You're supposed to wake up and like get used to the day and start your day on a positive note, not but be bombarded with so many different things. So that's just a few things. And light, you mentioned, light is so important in our overall health. The circadian rhythm, like our bodily processes have this, they have this program. And so, for example, liver detoxification, if you believe in traditional Chinese medicine, kicks in at a certain hour that's more active in the night between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. And we definitely know that our gut microbiome kicks in at different times of the day, and that's dependent on light. And most of us, like 92% of, Americans spent 92% of their time indoors. So that's already altering our circadian rhythm. And then you add to that artificial lighting during the night, and then our devices, and like we're looking at blue light way into the night when we naturally wouldn't be seeing any blue at all. Like after sunset, that's it. So we are living in a completely different world, and it's almost like we are guinea pigs for this experiment of like, how long can humans fight diseases for, like, in this artificial environment?
And as this experiment goes on, I think we're seeing some pretty clear indications that the guinea pigs are not doing so well.
Sadly so. And that's why we do these things, because when you become aware, you now can take action to protect yourselves, right? And I think that that's really important. So yeah, like people think that I'm a pain asking for these things, like when I'm at my kids' school events, is like, what's wrong with this woman, right? But it's like, well, I feel like if I know I have to do what's right for my kids and hopefully the people I know around me.
Yeah, it's survival, but then again, it's that thing of like, oh, okay, it's survivalism in this experiment that we can see is not going well. And then how do we also have a joyful life while doing it? And I think that's that's where the art comes in.
Yes.
Because, you can take it to the point of, I'm sorry, what chemicals are in the air? And there's a lot you can do to control your environment, control your food, control what you put on your body. And then you walk outside, and depending on what zip code you're in, all of that is there. What is in the water? I've been to places where I feel stressed about showering. Hell. I think about, or like, I'm so thirsty. I mean, these are the moments where I'm so thirsty and I don't have my water filtration and remineralization thing at home. And so I've got this choice of tap water from the hotel bathroom or stripped water from Coca-Cola in a plastic bottle. Look, and I know, these are first world problems. There are many people that, don't even have the option and are dying to have the option of tap water in a plastic bottle. But yeah, it's how do you take all the information? And I guess that's going to be the big reminder as we take in everything from you, is to take it in, get educated, and then you make the choices of advocating for yourself and your family.
Yeah, you do what you can, right? In the circumstances you're in. And that scenario you just described, I found myself in that scenario many times. But I feel like that's where the milkshake study comes in helpful, because there is nothing you can do. You have to drink water to survive. Like, I mean, that is always the first goal. You do what you can to survive and not be hit. Like, a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm not going to use hand sanitizers because it has these chemicals. But well, okay, if you were exposed to a deadly virus, you should use your hand sanitizer because that might save your life, right? So that's the order of priority, like protect yourself, don't die. But then we have like, it trickles down to like, then okay, well, I did that. I had to take that to protect myself. And that's okay, because, I feel like if you control that stress response, right? If you drink the water and you're like, oh my goodness, now I'm exposed to like plastic and lead and all this, then I feel like the stress response may even enhance the toxic effects of these chemicals. Whereas if you tell yourself, well, actually 80% of the time I do drink filtered water, my body is healthy and it's resilient and it can handle these times where like I have no control over my circumstances. That's the approach I take in these scenarios.
And so what do you do? Do you go for the little bit of tap water or the stripped?
Well, it depends on where I am, right? Because tap water in many parts of the world might expose me to deadly bacterial infections, or parasites. So I probably, like, if I'm in those countries, I will probably go for bottled.
What about in the US?
In the US, oh, that's interesting, actually. Depends on what bottled water I have access to.
It's like the worst of the worst.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
yeah,
not
so I mean, the thing with bottled water is that you're potentially exposed to the endocrine disruptors from plastic, right? And if you think about how those are metabolized, it's metabolized through your liver. And then, some of them actually come out of your system very quickly. Phthalates, BPA can come out of your system if you're not constantly bombarding your body with it, 24, 48 hours. Okay, so I would opt for that if I had to make a choice. This feels like what my son asks me all the time. He's always like, what do you choose?
What would you do?
Yeah, exactly.
An 11-year-old. This is
yeah, so I'm used to this type of question. So then I would drink that and then be like, okay, I'm gonna eat some broccoli sprouts. Let me look for some broccoli sprouts. Let me support my liver detoxification pathways. We know these endocrine disruptors are glucuronidated in the liver, so let me eat some orange, which is, contains glucuronidase, glucuronic acid naturally, and support my detoxification pathways through food.
And so in that tap water that we opted to have some endocrine disruptors over, the first three things in the tap water that pass through your mind, is it fluoride, pharmaceuticals, and lead? or what?
Yes, so those are probably arsenic. So heavy metals are now finding their way into our tap water because arsenic was heavily used in fertilizers, pesticides, feed, like chicken feed.
Mhm.
And so, when you release it into the environment, these heavy metals don't really disappear, right? They just end up in the soil and then our waterways. So arsenic is actually an increasing problem with well water. So a lot of people who live off well water, they're like, oh yeah, I have great water quality because it's well water, it's deep in the ground. Sadly, those aquifers are contaminated too. So I actually recommend for my clients who live on well water to test their well water now because we're finding heavy metal contamination a problem there. And yeah, fluoridation is an issue. We don't want to, I don't want to drink fluoride like it's supposed to protect our teeth. And, if you need to, like, depending on your diet and your lifestyle and, some genetic factors, some people are more prone to cavities and fluoride topically may help them, right? It's again, a nuanced conversation. Because if somebody ends up with a cavity and they get a mercury amalgam, is that worse for them than fluoride in their toothpaste? Possibly. It's a conversation that needs to be kind of individualized. We don't use fluoridated toothpaste, but that's because my diet doesn't predispose me to cavities, but I have no control over what other people are eating. I feel like chlorine and chlorinated byproducts are a big issue in tap water because these are often used as disinfectants to get rid of bacterial or microbial contaminants, right? Which we do not want in our water. So that's a good thing. But then once we've killed those organisms, we want to remove those byproducts, right? Like, why drink it too? And chlorine and chlorine byproducts, they can affect our gut microbiome. And there have been 2 studies that have shown this. So I do not want chlorine or chlorinated products in my water. And that's like these little exposures on a daily basis, multiple times a day. That's what's eroding our gut microbiome and gut health. And I see people like taking these supplements to repair their gut, but every day you're damaging your gut microbiome through your water, through your food. Like, we got to fix that first.
And through stress too, right? It's everyone going crazy for probiotics and not managing those daily things and stress. And it's like that
100%.
probiotics get you nowhere.
100%. Yeah. And we know stress can directly lead to increased gut permeability, aka leaky gut, and it can alter the gut microbiome, the bacteria in our gut.
Okay, so I have a million other household type everyday questions for you, but I felt like we had arrived at water, and that's such a hot one. So thank you for that. So what are I feel like when I think of symptoms that I've experienced, that have been my body's flags for me, that I've actually healed through detoxification, and again, not doing like a 7-day delivery meal plan or whatever, true detoxification. And we'll talk about what that actually means. Things that have been healed by doing that, things that I don't live with often, have been eczema, allergies, PMS. PMS feels like a really big one I want to dive into with you. Fertility issues, anxiety, depression, and brain fog. That's how it seems to animate.
Yeah.
For me. Do you feel like those are the most common ones?
100%. Those are by far the commonest symptoms of a kind of a high toxic load that I see. And it makes sense, right? Because these toxicants, the main places where they hit are our endocrine system, so our hormone system. These are messengers sent by the body to do things like, our thyroid hormone, for example, controls our metabolism. And we have insulin, another hormone that controls our blood glucose. And then we have sex hormones that, help regulate our periods and then fertility. These are all hormones, and environmental toxicants directly hit on these. So they can pretend to be our hormones and activate receptors. They can block our receptors, so they stop our hormones from functioning. They can even switch on and off genes that control these hormones. So, pregnant ladies, that's like a critical window to try and not be exposed to endocrine disruptors as much as you can, because that early stages of a development where genes are being regulated, very, very important to like that's when potentially exposure to endocrine disruptors can switch on and off genes. For example, we know like some of these obesogens, so like chemicals that have been shown to increase our propensity towards weight gain, they can switch on genes that then predisposes the next generation to more weight gain.
And so where are the top places that we're going to find endocrine disruptors, and then in particular obesogens?
Yes. So cookware is a common place. PFAS.
So it's is it like Teflon is
Teflon? Yeah. I would actually just, Teflon is kind of like the trade name for that layer of the black stuff that is nonstick. But actually it's a group, like PFAS is a group of now, I think something like 7,000, like the number keeps rising every time I check it, but the last time I checked, it's about 8,000 different chemicals. But basically this group of chemicals make things slippery, slide, and waterproof. And previously Teflon was using PFOA, PFOS, mainly to make the material. And then because there was this kind of regulation that says you should try and phase it out, a lot of companies voluntarily phased these two chemicals out, 2 out of 7,000 though, right? And so what it's been replaced with are very similar chemicals, very similar properties, similar endocrine disrupting capabilities going into the pan. And the marketing is now, we are PFOA free, tricking consumers into thinking these are now safer nonstick pans when they really are not. So I would just stay away with those coated nonstick pans that look, the shiny black surface. Just stay away from them.
I actually had, I went into Williams-Sonoma and wanted to look at what's happening in the world of greenware, or whatever it's called. Yeah. And the lovely associate there meant no harm. She said, this is all of our green cookware. It's completely non-toxic. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to buy one of these. This is incredible. What have I been doing at home with my crazy cookware? And I went on the website, I'm standing there in the shop and was, really disturbed to find that this is not non-toxic at all. And there's now a major retailer all over the US misleading people. And so I gave her some, very gentle feedback. I'm actually feeling like we should ping Williams-Sonoma now.
Yeah.
You're retreating. But you're right, it's really tricky.
Yeah, and non-toxic is a non-regulated term, right? I mean, you can call toxins non-toxic and there is no legal ramifications. You might get sued, but otherwise, you by law you can say anything is non-toxic. It doesn't really have a definition. So don't fall for the marketing. Don't just look at something that says non-toxic and believe it. You really think about the material and what ingredients have they put into it, what material is made from. And when these Teflon pans are because a lot of people think, oh yeah, I've had my Teflon pans for a long time. It's like off gas by now, right? It's not toxic anymore. Wrong. It actually gets more toxic the older it gets and the more scratched it gets. Like each scratch can release millions of particles of PFAS into your food. So in fact, the older it is, the worse it is. So you really, I mean, I don't ever tell people to toss things out. Usually it's kind of like, use up whatever you've got, and the next time you run out, switch to something else. But Teflon pans just, the biggest problem with these chemicals is that they are called forever chemicals because they stick around. Like they stick around. It's just so hard even for your body to get rid of them. And that's why I put that as number one, because yes, you may be exposed to BPA and phthalates, but your body can handle those. Your body doesn't know what to do with PFAS. And just recently in the press, in the publications, there were a couple of studies showing that PFAS increases your propensity to gaining back any weight you've lost. So in people who've lost weight, the higher their blood PFAS levels, the more weight they regain. So there's a correlation there.
Yeah, which is a whole other conversation. I feel like we could take a whole other hour in just talking about obesity and where that comes from. And it's not calorie in, calorie out. And
It is not. Yeah. And if you're trying
world's
to lose weight and getting nowhere, a lot of people feel like they feel shamed, and they're like, oh, my doctor just thinks that I'm lying to them. I'm really not eating all this food. I'm really struggling. And I believe them, because there are these chemicals in your body trying to, like, you're swimming against the tide with these chemicals in your body. So the biggest message I want people to take away is, if you're trying to lose weight, please support your detox pathways, because if you don't, when you lose the weight, a lot of the stored toxins from the fat loss gets released in your bloodstream. And we've seen this in many, many different studies. And that actually slows down your metabolism, making it harder and harder for you to lose weight. And eventually you regain all the weight back.
So the PFAS are, cookware is the biggest one. I found actually I was really late to join the period underwear game.
Oh yes, me too.
And I did. And it's been, when I did, this is kind of embarrassing, but I decided to get on the period underwear game when I invested in some really nice white sheets. And so that was now they're great. But I was shocked to see that there's that one company,
Thinks.
I was like, is it It's not Spanx, Thinks.
Yeah.
Filled with PFAS. And
Yeah.
sadly, you know what? The first time I actually got them was postpartum. And so I got it and I put them on, and the material was so synthetic and so weird feeling and plasticky that I didn't have the mental capacity to go, figure out what was happening. But I immediately took them off and said, this is my body. And years later, I went and looked, and they have class action lawsuits against them. And where else are they hiding? What else do we need to be?
Oh gosh, how long do we have? So because if you just think of the functionality of this group of chemicals, they make things slippery and waterproof. So like one sneaky place is actually your floss, dental floss. The Glide, Oral-B Glide, that's so popular. Everyone loves them. I used to love them because they just work so well. They glide, they don't fray, they don't get caught. And it's because it's coated with the Teflon group family of materials. And there was one study that showed that women who used Oral-B Glide actually had higher blood levels and urine levels of PFAS chemicals. So, even that can increase your blood levels of this chemical. Like you wouldn't think so, but then, yeah, some of it is like in your mouth and you're swallowing it and things like that. So floss. And then also, the waterproof jackets. I mean, those are probably not, you're not ingesting it, right? But what's happening? It's breaking down and being released into your environment. And there are these dust particles floating around all the time that then become vehicles for the PFAS, which then enter your body through inhalation. So dusting your home is actually a surprisingly effective way to reduce your exposure to these chemicals.
I'm feeling really good about my janky floss that tears and like
Yes, you want it to tear.
Feeling really good about my vintage Barber jacket that is just waxed canvas. And so, gosh, I'm now thinking about the rain jackets, luggage, little like dump kits. So kind of going back to a waxed canvas, thick canvas.
We need to move back to that. And, I'm so proud to live in California. I think you do too, right?
Yep.
Because we're trying to phase out PFAS, and we're definitely the first place is the packaging of takeaway boxes and food. That's another place. Like, a lot of people think those are made from paper, right? Takeaway boxes and paper cups. Well, how does paper exactly become waterproof, right? Like piece of paper, if you put food or water on that, this is going to soak through right away. Well, they put a lining of PFAS sometimes to prevent that. And that's another route of exposure. And that's being phased out in California, which I'm so happy to see.
And so will that be replaced with a PLA, do you think?
That's the question, right? It's like when we had BPA-free bottles, like what was it replaced with? Not something better. BPF, BPS were the replacements, and they were shown to still have endocrine disrupting properties. So yeah, I don't know is the answer, but we'll find out.
Tea sachets? I feel like anything, I don't know why, there's this marketing move to have these little plastic mesh tea sachets.
Crazy, right? Crazy. Because they look fancy and they look expensive. You find like it's the expensive brands that use them.
And it's the organic tea, the beautiful organic tea in this plastic bag that you're gonna, so is that another hiding spot?
That's a source of more microplastic than PFAS. So microplastic is a whole nother topic we can talk an hour about. But so far we don't have direct correlation of microplastic with health issues, other than one study that showed higher levels of microplastic in your stool, in your poop, is correlated with an increased risk and increased severity of inflammatory bowel disease. So that's Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, those conditions, sometimes very severe conditions where people bleed from, have rectal bleeding, and they have like persistent diarrhea, lose a lot of weight, have a lot of pain, very serious conditions. So there's one correlation to human health. But we know that plastic is made out of thousands of these different chemicals, right? Most of them are endocrine disruptors, or they're carcinogens like benzene, styrene. So I don't think it's going to be good for us. But, time will tell.
And so microplastics, I mean, I know that now microplastics are found in all sea salt.
Yes, very sad. Yeah, we've polluted our ocean so much that microplastic has found its way into even things like salt. But I do feel like this is where kind of like, I zoom out, take I look at my overall toxic exposure in the context of how these exposures are coming in, right? Like salt, I might have like tops 1 teaspoon, like definitely, probably not even that a day, like very small amount. Like it's not comparable to the amount of water I drink, for example, right? So I'm going to focus more on things that I'm exposed to a lot more. I mean, it's depressing. Like I know that a lot of people like up in arms about salt, and they're like, what salt should I do? I'm like, have you got a water filter in your house? If you don't, do that first. And, let's focus on the big exposures, your air, your water, your food. Once you've done those, what you slathering all over your body lotion, things where you're really getting a lot of exposure. And then we whittle down to like things that you're not perhaps getting that much exposure to. Like, for example, chocolate, right? There was a big thing about chocolate, heavy metals in chocolate, and people started saying they're going to stop eating chocolate. Well, I eat like a couple of squares of chocolate sometimes when I'm that time of month, maybe like half a bar or 1 bar.
I'm with you.
It's not like a daily 1 bar a day type of exposure, right? So I think context really matters, and when you're considering exposures.
And is that in the chocolate? I know that there's the Prop 65 in California around it. And so it's not actually the cacao, it's the process of grinding the cacao.
Yeah, a lot of it is the processing. Yeah.
Metal. So just thinking, but if somebody was really worried, maybe get some chocolate. I know that there's one company that does stone ground chocolate. Would that be?
Perhaps, but it's also the storage, and then cadmium is actually coming in through the soil. So that's actually, you got to look at the farm then for that. So the lead is more the processing, the cadmium is more to do with the soil. So there are companies, I would just look at the companies who test the end product. So there are companies who test, like I buy from Santa Barbara Chocolate. They test, they're not free of heavy metals, nothing is, but they test at a good level that I'm happy with.
Are you near Santa Barbara?
Sorry?
Are you near to Santa Barbara? Do you live?
I'm about 3 hours away. I'm in the Bay Area.
Oh, you're in the Bay Area. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that we were maybe neighbors and about to discover this on Zoom.
No, I wish. Maybe next time I come down to LA, I will drop you a note and come and meet you.
Yes, please.
But Santa Barbara test, and then there was a consumer report that actually tested a bunch, like something like 24 different chocolates. And is it Mast? I think it's called Mast, is a company that tests very, very clean for both lead and cadmium. So if you're worried, and like, for example, if you already have lead toxicity, you do want to take extra care with that, right? And then with going back to salt, there's a brand called Jacobson, and they actually test for microplastic and heavy metals too. So if you do want to use a salt that's low in microplastic and heavy metals, that would be the one.
And what about, I've switched from using sea salt all the time to using Himalayan, or there's another one out of Utah. And so if it's a rock salt that hasn't been touched by the modern world yet.
Yeah, theoretically, yes, that will be better for microplastic. I don't know though, because they've not been tested. So until you test, you just don't know. And I do wonder about how they're stored sometimes as well, right? Because what I see is a lot of people put their salt right next to their stovetop, because it's convenient, right? But if you heat plastic, it leaches more, it releases more chemicals into the thing around it. And there was a study that showed spices stored in plastic jars contain more plastic than spices stored in glass jars. So I don't know whether that's the same with salt. I don't know a salt that's stored in glass, to be honest. So like we can like kind of go down this rabbit hole forever. But yeah, I think at some point you just gotta kind of be like, okay, well, this is, I'm doing my best with the 80%, and this is the 20% that it's okay. Like my body can handle it if I support my detox organs.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about air filters in the home and water filters in the home. And then I kind of want to also get into PMS. Which one do you want to go? What feels like we back up and do PMS or get into some filtration?
Anything. Well, PMS, I feel like is really important because so many women are affected by it and they don't realize that there's things that they can do to help themselves, right? And fundamentally, it really comes down to what we've been talking about is endocrine disruption. Very often it's an imbalance between the estrogen and progesterone, these two sex hormones predominant in a female body. And these two hormones kind of like go up and down through the cycle. And it's the balance between the two that give us these symptoms. And that's why we feel differently through our cycle. It's because the fluctuation in these hormones. And for a lot of women, the estrogen just stays super high and dominant throughout their cycle. And so that's throwing off, their mood, their libido, and them, making them feel more anxious. They have cramping. So yeah, and then on the flip side, we talked about stress earlier. Stress is suppressing the progesterone. Progesterone is kind of like your Valium. Think of it as a Valium for your body. Like it makes you feel calm, it makes you feel great. And because of stress, progesterone is being suppressed. And so now you really see that massive difference between progesterone and estrogen, and the calming factor has gone, and then the estrogen is making you, have breakouts, breast tenderness, and all this stuff. And what can you do about it? Support your liver and gut health, because that's where estrogen is broken down and eliminated from the body. So a lot of people, they jump straight into things like DIM, right? DIM is a supplement that some people take for high estrogen. But actually, if you think back down to the root cause, a lot of the time it's just because of an overburdened liver and disrupted gut.
So endocrine disruptors would affect PMS, libido, fertility, perimenopause, teenagers. Why am I blanking on the word for puberty?
Yeah.
So we've got all of those sex hormone phases in life. And it sounds like it's a combination of the perfect storm of PFAS and stress. And we're bathing in both.
Yeah, there's so much to it. I mean, there's just so many different pieces of the puzzle that come together into this perfect storm. There's the nutrient deficiency, inflammatory food, and inflammation, which then, can cause endocrine disruption in itself. And then you've got the endocrine disruptors coming in, affecting the hormonal system. And then you couple that with an overburdened liver because, it's trying to deal with all the environmental toxins and, a lack of nutrients to support those pathways. That's the perfect storm for like an imbalance in your hormones.
And what are 3 things? If you could just pick 3 things for your liver, what would that be?
The first one I would say is to incorporate cruciferous vegetables. So that's like the biggie. Most people are not even getting a portion into their diet, right? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about broccoli, bok choy, cabbage, arugula. Broccoli sprouts is probably my favorite. It's by weight 3 to 50 times more effective than broccoli itself. in terms of the concentration of this beneficial compound called sulforaphane, which actually activates your liver detoxification pathway. So it actually sends a message to the cells in your liver like, hey, get to work, right? Activate them, both phase 1 and 2. And that's the beauty of it. So cruciferous vegetables is a really big one. Gosh, 3. 3 is so hard. I really love allium vegetable. I'm focusing on food here. I mean, like a really, really huge one is to manage your stress, right? But if we're talking about
Got it.
food,
Or 3. Yeah, it doesn't
so,
have to be food, just like 3, like, oof, I
okay.
could somebody's only going to walk away with 3.
Okay. So, yeah, cruciferous vegetable is number 1. And then manage your stress is really, really important because stress will directly impact the function of your liver. Because your brain, your nervous system is actually the conductor for your whole body. All the organs are under the direction of your nervous system and brain. Sends signals like, hey, upregulate, hey, downregulate, right? And if you think about our bodies when we're in a, if we're being faced with a saber-toothed tiger and our lives are in danger, right? That's when we're in that fight or flight, like I need to save my life by running away. Liver detoxification is like the last thing your body wants you to do, right? It's going to divert resources to all the muscles in your body and get you to run as fast as you can. And so liver detoxification is down-regulated when you're in that state. And so is gut repair, digestion, all of that, because that's the last thing the body wants to do. And so like, if you think about
the last thing the body wants to
yeah,
do is
fertility,
yeah.
Libido, for sure, 100%. And so if you're living in that state, which actually surprisingly a lot of people are, and it's not because they're faced with a saber-toothed tiger, they're just bombarded by like their to-do list, looking at their phone first thing in the morning, stress, modern day stress I'm talking about. So if you're living every day in that state, your liver detoxification can't even ramp up, right? It doesn't matter how many supplements you want to take. You can take all the liver support supplement in the world, but the one control center is sending to your liver like, don't detox, go run and save your life, right? And I kind of liken it to driving on a freeway in first gear. That's what you're doing when you're in a everyday stressed out state. Your body can't repair and you're just driving along in first gear, like revving that engine, but you can't go fast. So I would say that would be like top of my list. And I have a course that teaches how to detox the right way. And that's actually the first step. Before I even go to liver, I deal with the nervous system, and then I deal with the gut, and then I go to the liver. So I guess the number 3 would be gut. Make sure you're pooping every day. And this is really, really important for hormone health, because that is one of the main ways estrogen comes out of your body, excess estrogen. And if you're not pooping, the estrogen is being reabsorbed back into your body. Because when the estrogen is no longer, it's done its job, no longer needed, the liver breaks it down, sends it through the bile into your gut, where hopefully it's like comes out in your poop. But while poop is sitting in your gut, it's the bile part is being reabsorbed, like upwards of 90% of bile is reabsorbed. And the estrogen is in that part where it's being reabsorbed. So you want regular elimination, once or twice a day, ideally.
Okay. And so this sounds so pathetic as I'm saying it out loud, but have to be honest with you. There are days, and sometimes days in a row, where I don't eat a cruciferous vegetable. And I'm ashamed to say it because I know all of the information, because I have the means to obtain them and do it organic and have them organically. I have children. It's like I know the why, and then I have those days where I am working until I'm blind. I'm doing my best to get my kids to eat something. And so in that case, is that a place where you think, okay, the best is just eat the vegetables for many reasons? Would you say you could have dim? Do you think that it's
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not against supplements, actually. I think there is a place, especially, people with busy lives like you and when I travel, I supplement because I know I'm not going to get my daily allowance or what I want to get into my body. So I supplement when I travel, when I'm really busy. I'm not against it. I think it's a very useful tool to bridge that gap, right? And, I love your magnesium product because magnesium is one of the most, I would say, like most people are deficient in magnesium. One, because we're so busy trying to methylate and detoxify. And the other thing is, it's just not coming into our diet enough. And number three, people are just not absorbing it as efficiently as they should be from food. And so I see that a lot. And it definitely interferes with detoxification, in which case then it affects, hormone health, because it's a huge, huge part of methylation, which is how hormones are activated and deactivated. So I actually sometimes take magnesium supplement myself. And DIM, yes. The thing to note about DIM, though, is that it will reduce your overall estrogen level. It's not just, like the estrogen that's being broken down. So if you may be suffering with low estrogen, which we also see, that's the other end of the spectrum, more kind of towards menopause, and you're taking DIM, and then all of a sudden you have no sex drive, and then you're experiencing some dryness, and mentally you're not very clear anymore. That might be a side effect of DIM, and it's your body telling you it's not for you. And that's why broccoli sprouts is good, because it kind of only tackles the waste aspect of estrogen. It doesn't just like overall drop your estrogen.
Okay, I'm inspired. I actually did take DIM for 30 or 60 days. And I tested estrogen before. I took the DIM for that period of time. It dropped. I was a little estrogenic, and I just always tend to be. I had such a sharp drop.
It works.
I didn't feel like myself anymore. I became like I just felt really flat. I felt like pretty logical and calm, to be honest, but that felt also not like me. I was like missing the spark.
Yes.
I don't know, I was missing some essence, I felt like.
Yeah, that could be because of the DIM. Yeah, and the calm is probably because now your estrogen is able to show, right? The balance has now come up. Like the estrogen's like, oh yeah, I can, show my efforts now. Whereas before, the estrogen is just like pushing down the progesterone, right? Like, no, you're not gonna show. It's like the jealous sibling type situation.
Okay, but I'm inspired with the broccoli sprouts, and that actually feels like supplementation that you can't quite travel with, but I can keep that in the fridge.
I mean, there is sulforaphane supplements now. I haven't seen studies that they work as well as broccoli sprouts, but actually, no, I'm lying now. There's one study of using sulforaphane supplements in children with autism, and it showed an improvement in their symptoms very quickly, something like within 30 days. So yeah, I think supplements may be an answer. And, I might, if I find one, I think that the problem is the stability of the supplement, right? Because we don't know how much of the active ingredient actually gets delivered to where it needs to be. But yeah, like if I can find a good one, I would supplement with that.
Okay, well, I just wrote it down. Everybody listening, we're writing that down. But also, I'm really into the broccoli sprouts.
Oh
I'm
yeah, I sprout my own at home, so that I always have it on hand, and I just drop a little bit on like as a side, and I really like putting it into my smoothies too. And oh, here's a little tip: like if you want to get the benefits of broccoli sprouts, but you don't want to supplement and you're traveling, bring some moringa with you. So moringa actually also kind of stimulates the same pathway. It has the compound isocyanate that stimulates the same pathway that compounds in broccoli sprouts can. So that would be kind of like an easy swap because it's a dry powder, right? You can just like put that into like your drinks or whatever. Yeah.
cool. I had some fresh moringa when I was nursing and we were in Hawaii. And
Nice.
the difference between the dried moringa, which, because it's helps with enriching the milk and
Mm.
producing more milk. And so I knew that effect.
Mm.
Just the smallest amount of fresh moringa,
Mm.
it was like my boobs were exploding.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that about moringa. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I know it's extremely nutrient rich, like full of iron as well and minerals. So yeah, moringa is good.
Okay. I'm inspired. Thank you. Okay, so that's the endocrine disruptors. What about mold?
Oh, mold is another topic. We can talk for days, literally, about that because it's an increasing problem. Like I never learned about it at medical school. And if you were to ask me 20 years ago, I would be like, yeah, I treated invasive mold, like a mold fungal pneumonia. I treated those in hospital with IVs. But those are usually in people with compromised immune systems, like, for example, people with HIV, they would be kind of susceptible to that. But never saw it in people with fully functioning immune system until probably in the last like 10 years, I started to have these patients and clients with mystery symptoms like that. It just could not get to the bottom of. And then there were these tests coming out that actually tested for mycotoxins. So these are the toxins that are produced by mold in the urine. And of course, it's not a validated, recognized conventional test. It was like a new test, but they were showing high levels of these toxins in that urine. And then, when we did things to upregulate their detox pathways to help them eliminate the mold and then do remediation, their symptoms improved. Like I had this lady, for example, she had lived with probably like in excess of 5 years of like severe, what she was diagnosed with, adrenal fatigue. It's not really recognized anymore, but back then it was all the ways, right? Adrenal fatigue. Like she was on 10 different supplements daily for years and years because the minute she stops, she will just have no energy. She literally just won't be able to get out of bed. And then I was just like, there's got to be a reason. Like, all her labs were normal. And then she had high levels of mold in her urine. And so this was like 4 years ago now. So it's not, it was still not common to talk about it. And her conventional doctors were like, what are you talking about? What is this test? Like, it's not, I didn't learn about this at medical school. So anyway, cut a long story short, we supported her detox pathways. She did find mold in her house. She remediated that, and literally after 3 months, she didn't need her supplements anymore. Yeah, so it's one of those things. I think it's still anecdotal right now. Like there's just not enough science in the literature to really help guide us right? So you're going to find doctors doing different things and believing different things about mold. But, you know, I do believe that mycotoxins, the mold produced by, the toxins produced by the mold damage our mitochondria. And that's how it exerts its effect. It's literally getting to the mitochondria and suppressing the production of ATP, the energy in our cells. And that's where, like, you start to get symptoms of brain fog, fatigue, you know, the various different symptoms that are associated with mold illness.
So we had black mold in our last home that we were living in.
Oh, wow.
And I was also pregnant and working a lot and pregnant, and I felt so terrible. But I also just thought I was pregnant. Like the symptoms are kind of similar to pregnancy, but this was like really intense.
Wow.
That's what I remembered with my first pregnancy. And then there was a heavy rain and the ceiling fell in and exposed that it was, you know, a wall to our bedroom, and our entire
Oh my goodness.
was all black mold. I made the mistake of actually, we stayed at home during the remediation. So they mark it off with plastic. I don't know. I was not thinking straight. We should have gotten the hell out of there while they were doing the remediation. But I stayed. I felt terrible when they were doing the remediation. And then once the remediation was done, I started to immediately feel so much better. So, you know, there's that severe black mold in the house. Are you worried about mold? Should someone be worried if they see a bit of mold in their shower?
It really depends on your toxic load. That's what I would say, because mold toxins are basically metabolized and broken down and eliminated the same way all the toxicants we were talking about, right? So if your toxic bucket is almost full with all the other environmental exposures, and you add a little bit of mold in there, it's going to overfill and you're going to have symptoms, right? Whereas, like, if you live a pretty clean life and then you add a little bit of mold in there, your liver can probably handle it and break it down and eliminate it. So it's mainly eliminated through the liver pathway, through the gut, and poop. So you got to be, like, pooping is so important. And I feel like if your pathways were open and you had a little bit and your toxic load is not high, you probably won't have symptoms. And actually, there are genetic susceptibilities to mold toxins too. Some people can live in black mold environment and not have a single symptom. They're so lucky. And then there will be people I know, like some of my clients, they will travel, go to a hotel, and they go into a room, and within an hour, they're like, okay, there's mold in here. I immediately have symptoms. I need to change rooms. So there's like the different extremes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another, you know, putting it in context when people say people are, you know, wellness people are so crazy. Oh, now we have to worry about mold. Humans have been living with mold this entire time. Yes, they've been living with mold this entire time, but they haven't been living with glyphosate and the 80,000 other airborne chemicals and microplastics. And so that's where it
Exactly.
scales.
Yeah. In the context of nutrient poor diet, where your detox pathways can't get rid of these toxins anymore so efficiently, right? And I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah. And so the detoxification pathways in the body, can you just briefly walk us through what those
Of course, my favorite topic. So we have the liver, we have the kidneys, we have the lymph, we have sweat. Those are our main ones, and lungs to a certain extent as well. So what happens, like, if we just take a real kind of like 20,000 feet view, like when toxins enter our body, and that could be alcohol, that could be mold toxins, that could be endocrine disruptors, they enter the body, and the first place they usually go to is the liver to be broken down. They're kind of inactivated and turned into something that's water soluble, because most of these toxins are lipophilic. They love the fat. They only dissolve in fat. They don't like water. And in order to come out in your urine and sweat, they have to be water soluble. So that's where the liver comes in. The liver does that, turns the fat soluble toxins into water soluble toxins. Mold, for example, is lipophilic. Mold toxins, it gets stored in the fat and it's not water soluble. So once the liver does that through phase 1 and 2, and those 2 phases need a ton of nutrients, including amino acids from protein, minerals like zinc, magnesium, really, really important. Your antioxidants, B vitamins, super, super important, like folate, B12. They are crucial in liver detoxification. Most people are deficient in that, in one of those nutrients, right? So then that pathway is already sluggish, right? So now there's an overload of toxins. But once the liver does that, it sends the toxins now into the bile. So a lot of people don't realize that bile is so important in detoxification. And when you're stressed, your bile flow is sluggish because the bile is under the control of your nervous system and the gut. So when you eat food, the taste buds in your mouth and the brain that sees the food and smells the food tells your gallbladder, release the bile because food is coming to help it digest. But that bile is also carrying toxins that the liver has just broken down. And now that toxin is going to travel into your gut to be pooped out. And so that's how it goes. It goes through your liver, into the bile, into your gut, pooped out. Another way is once the liver is done with the toxin, is it's carried through bile, blood flow, lymph and blood to your kidneys, where it can be peed out, or to your sweat glands, where it's sweated out. And studies have shown that sweat can contain heavy metals, BPA. So that, the lymph is another very important, oftentimes missed kind of connection in detoxification. And when I approach detox, I actually work from the bottom up. So where it gets eliminated is often blocked. We got to unblock that first. So that's the gut. Make sure you're sweating. Make sure you're pooping. Make sure you're sweating. Make sure you're peeing and hydrated. Those are the 3 main elimination pathways. And if any of those are blocked, whatever the liver's doing, it's kind of almost useless, because the liver can do all it wants. But if the toxins are not coming out, it's just recirculating in your body and it's still building up in the body. So we got to let things out first, right? So make sure you optimize your gut health, make sure you're moving your body, make sure you're sweating. And then we can open up the liver pathways.
And so what about MTHFR? Is that a condition that affects how we can detox, or do you find
100%? It's a condition that can affect so many aspects of health, but one of them is detoxification. And it's not really a condition, it's just a variation in genetics. And it didn't used to show up as much, because before folic acid supplementation was kind of available, or it was added into our food, like our cereal and bread, people with this genetic variation would basically they're just not as likely to survive, because, they will become deficient in folate and, have medical problems. But once we started supplementing, that, allowed people to kind of still lead pretty normal lives, because they were getting the folate. So methylation is really important, because it controls the folate. It's the folate pathway, which provides basically what detoxification detoxification needs. So think of it as like if toxins are angry people, the methylation pathway provide friends to calm these toxins down. So it provides friends to like basically calm them and pull them out of the body. But if you don't have these friends available because you're either deficient in folate or you're not methylating properly because you have MTHFR, then you get an overload of these angry toxins, and that's when you get symptoms.
And so for someone to figure out if they have MTHFR, they can, I think there's a program that will
You can
hijack
test. Yeah, you
the,
can test for it. It's pretty easy to test for now. I mean, if you run a 23andMe, I don't think they tell you, but then you can use that report, send it to, like, there's so many different companies that do it now. They can do like the genetic testing for you for that, along with lots of different genetics too. It's not just MTHFR that's involved in detoxification. The variations in glutathione S transferase, which is an enzyme involved in glutathione detoxification. That's a huge pathway in detoxification. So if you have a variation there, then you've got to support your glutathione pathway. So I feel like it can be helpful to know these things, because like if you have MTHFR, then you got to load up on your leafy green vegetables. You got to supplement with the right form of folate, right? Not folic acid, which is the synthetic form, because you actually lack the enzyme to really convert it into the active form. So, if you don't have that genetic variation, you can take folic acid. And you would still be able to convert. So that's why it's this kind of conversation around nutrition is very nuanced, because it depends on your genetics too. But yeah, you can test for it.
and so somebody, I know in this community, we've got a lot of people that have tested, they see they have it, they are mindful about what kind of, they're getting the methylated forms of B vitamins. I feel like having it's something that's made me work a little bit harder to detox.
For
So
sure.
which is why I'm in Italy, eating spaghetti and feeling fine. But it's really making sure that I poop, sweat, and pee. The infrared sauna, I feel like, has been a useful tool. Is there anything else you would recommend for people that just have to work a bit harder on that? I mean, there's ways of making sure you poop. We know how to make sure that we pee. Sweating, there's a few ways to do it. Anything else?
Movement is really important, because moving your body actually is the only way to get your lymph flowing. Your lymph, so compared to your circulatory system, which is your blood vessels, is driven by a pump, right? Which is your heart. It pumps the blood around. Even if you're sitting still, blood is traveling through your body. That's not happening in your lymphatic system. So your lymphatic system, if you're sitting still, is stagnant. The lymph is not moving at all. And if you think about your lymphatic system as kind of like the waste drainage pipes from the cells, so they carry waste away from the cells, so the metabolites through breaking down nutrients, right? That produces a lot of waste and your toxins from the cells to the detoxification organs. And if you're sitting down all day long, that's not happening. And the other thing the lymphatic system does is to deliver nutrients. So the nutrients the cell needs to do that detoxification or do whatever it needs is being delivered through the lymphatic system as well. So, I like you don't have to go out and do like 2 hours of HIIT or even 1 hour of HIIT. I like to do exercise snacks, because it's the constant regular movement that really drives that lymphatic system, right? So if you just work out for 2 hours and then you're sat still for the rest of the day, you know, it's better than nothing, but the lymphatic system should be like a regular clock that runs, right? So, you know, once you've sat at a desk for like an hour, get up and do some press ups or like jumping jacks or whatever, like get your body moving for a minute, 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be long, but just, you know, just get the lymph flowing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. A friend of mine turned me on to jumping jacks all over again. You know, said the girl that was like, is there a hack for not being able to boil broccoli? You know, the same thing is you can really do 15 jumping jacks.
I love jumping. I love jumping. It gets the lymph flowing really well and, you know, moves the diaphragm up and down, the diaphragm sitting on top of your liver. I love it. So
I've had the little rebounders and then I've
yes.
found like,
Oh, I love that. So if you have that, go on your rebounder for your break. And, you know, studies show that we can't focus beyond, I don't know, something like 20, 30 minutes in a spurt anyway. So like whatever you're doing beyond 20, 30 minutes, you're not really actually focusing at 100% capacity. So go on your rebounder for like a minute and then come back.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so for our last thing here, there's so much and there's so much more we could get into. I think the last thing I want to hit just quickly, reverse osmosis for your house, for somebody who's looking to like, okay, next thing I'm going to invest in for my health. Do you feel like water filtration, if you can just get that reverse osmosis, I think it's important to then treat your drinking water with some minerals or a little bit of salt afterwards?
Yes. So not everybody needs reverse osmosis actually, because some water filtration systems can remove the contaminants in your water, depending on what contaminants there are, without the need to go to reverse osmosis, which wastes a lot of water. So for every 1 gallon of drinking water you get, there's usually 5 gallons of water that's needed to produce that. So there's 4 gallons of water waste. And, you know, living in California, I've just become more cognizant of water wastage. So I actually used to use reverse osmosis, and I just switched to an under sink system that doesn't. And the added advantage beyond water waste is that I don't need to now add any minerals back into my water, whereas I used to, because reverse osmosis would remove all the beneficial minerals. So the first thing I say is what I did was I actually tested my tap water, and then the tap water report told me what I needed for my water to get the best quality drinking water. So it basically showed I didn't need reverse osmosis. So I was like, okay, let me try this other system. I installed it, tested the water after I installed it to make sure all the contaminants are gone, and it was effective. So I'm happy with that. So water, I feel like it's really, really personal, because it really depends on what contaminants are in your particular water. And for some people, maybe a carbon filter is enough, right? It just depends. But I do think it is important. And I would actually, sometimes I would prioritize that over an air filter at home, just because you can do things to minimize air pollutants in your home, for example, by removing fragrance, not burning candles, you know, using extractor fans, opening windows, damp dusting regularly. You really can't do much about the water quality coming into your house, right? I mean, that's up to the municipal suppliers. So sometimes I do prioritize the water filter over air filter.
Okay. And then no shoes in the house. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's
Me
something
too.
that can really upset Westerners. Like they're being so bossy and so rude, and they were not prepared to take their shoes off. Can you tell us why that is an easy,
Oh
simple
yeah,
treat?
it's a massive thing for me because I mean I growing up in Taiwan, I grew up in Taiwan until 13. I just never seen anyone wear their shoes inside the home. And then I moved to the UK. It's like, what are you doing? You're coming into my home with your shoes on. It's just like a conditioned thing in my head. But you know, science has shown that when the bottom of your shoes, like what have they found? Bacteria like E. coli, salmonella. They found heavy metals. They found petrochemicals, pesticides. Because I mean, whatever you're walking on, right? Unless you're walking on pristine, like Swiss forest land, right? You're going to be tracking whatever, like you're going to public toilets. What's in there, right? E. coli, salmonella on the floor. Where you're walking, like golf course, pesticides. So it's just like it's tracking on the bottom of your shoes. And when you go into the house, as I was talking about earlier with the dust, there's dust particles everywhere. Even if you vacuum every day, there's going to be dust. These are then transferred onto the dust particles into your house. And that's how it gets into your body, because people are like, oh, so what? Like, I'm not licking the bottom of my shoes. Well, you almost are, because it's going into the dust particles. You're breathing it in.
Yeah. I also feel like, even though you've kind of just disproven this with it being airborne, I feel like I've gained so much space in my home. You gain so much surface area that you can use. The floor is no longer oof just for shoes, and you can lay down on it, you can eat on it, you can
Yeah.
a lot of fun to be had on your floor.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like shoes are a big thing that I have never gotten my head around, and I will always insist.
Existing. Okay, and so for our last thing, I feel like this community, many of us have considered fragrances, food, water, air. I've been saying PFAS. Is it PFAS?
PFAS, yeah.
PFAS. Okay. PFAS, cleaning supplies, laundry, shoes in the house, paint that we're using, fabrics that we're using on our bodies and our homes. What is your one hidden thing, or like one thing we haven't discovered for those of us that are excited by this and looking for one more thing to conquer?
We talked about dental floss. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. And then maybe coffee cups, like, you know, when you go out and get your coffee, those paper cups, you're drinking through the plastic lids, and the heat from your hot drink is dissolving the plastic lining inside a cup that may contain PFAS and microplastics. And then you're, you know, drinking plastic through the plastic lid. So I actually get a reusable coffee cup and take it with me when I go to coffee shops. Not always, I still forget it sometimes, but when I do, then I try to get iced. At least the temperature of the drink does matter in how much chemicals leach into your drink.
Okay, that's a hot tip, and another reason to bring a cup.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of this. Everybody will be. And you have an incredible Instagram page that really breaks it down into bite-sized snackable content, so that as we follow you, you give us like really easily attainable hits. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and you can find Dr. Chen on plateful.health.
Yes. On Instagram, I'm at plateful, PLATEFUL .health, HEALTH. I also have a website with a lot of blog posts. So that's www.platefulhealthinoneword.com.
And then you also mentioned a course on somebody who's saying, okay, I want to get really serious about detoxification and wants you to walk them through. They would get that on your website?
Yes, so the website for that is joindetoxright.com. And I can give your audience a discount on that too. So I can email
Oh,
that
yes,
to your team.
please. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So this is the reason why I created it 2 years ago is exactly what we talked about at the beginning of the call, is because, detox is so misunderstood. There's so much taboo around it. Lots of people doing it wrong. They're not opening up their detox pathways and just taking a bunch of supplements and getting nowhere. And I was just seeing so many side effects and people just getting stuck and not really detoxing in my client population, my patients. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a science-based detox course and actually talk about the science of detox, like how your liver actually works, how your kidneys actually work, and how to combine these things into a lifestyle so that you're detoxing every single day and you're not just doing a 7-day cleanse where you're starving yourself and you're not actually detoxing. So that's joindetoxright.com, and I'll give your audience a discount too.
okay, so we will follow up. If people are listening or watching now, we will get all of that information and that discount for you. And thank you so much for your work.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun talking to you, and keep doing the great work you're doing with Moon Juice.
Oh, thank you. And please be in touch. You're so close. If you come down south, I would love to
I would love to meet you. Yes, definitely.
I would love to. We can bring our own cups and have some tea.
I love that. I love that. Yes, I would love that. Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Thank you so
You
much.
too. Thank you.
Bye.